And with the ghost voice, we're ready to start the meeting. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the project Koala, the Transparency Exchange API. I hope you see the meeting notes. You should also have a link to that somewhere in the Slack channel and access to it. I'll update the list here. I see we have a new participant, Chris. Why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll introduce ourselves. Welcome to the group.
Thank you. Pretty excited to be here. As you can probably tell from the accent, I'm Aussie. So if I'm speaking too fast, which is, something we all do, slow me down. I'll take no offense. I work with the Australian government, a state government agency, but we have a lot of collaboration across DoD and some other police forces. And I do a lot of vulnerability management and security partnerships with ISMS, threat modeling with DevSecOps, lots of things. That's pretty much it.
Ooh. You're very welcome. We're having fun in this group. Steve, who are you? Short.
I don't know.
Long
I was
version.
hoping you could. I was hoping you could tell me.
You're the one who didn't show up in Stockholm. That's for sure.
Yeah. I would have loved to have gone, but somebody went and had scheduled a conference on top of an existing conference. So we'll have to work on that next year.
Yeah.
But no, Steve Springer, Director of Product Security at ServiceNow. I also am responsible for a lot of what CycloneDX is today. Dependency track, SCVS, a bunch of other stuff. Fun fact, very first contributor who later became a leader of the CycloneDX project was himself an Aussie. So I'm certainly used to working within the time zone in this particular case in Queensland. So glad you're here.
Victor.
Sure. Say a few words. I'm Victor, done a few startups, currently kind of obsessing over SBOMs in various capacities. Got a bit involved with CISA, working with the reference implementation for SBOMs, starting to build a company around SBOM management or distribution called Spomify, and also involved with a company called Screenly. We're doing Secure by Design, which is kind of what led me into the whole world of SBOM in part. So that's why I have a podcast called Monica Victor with Steve. He's going to be on the next episode, I think. And so yeah, check it out.
So, and you're based in the UK, right?
Correct. I'm currently in Portugal, but normally based in the UK. That is correct.
Oh, I feel sad for you in Portugal with that food and wine.
I know.
Pavel.
It's a tough life, but so I got to do it.
Pavel.
Hi, everyone. I mostly specialize myself in DevOps, but we've been in my startup, we've been building a system which is very much aligned with T for the last 5 years, I would say, more or less. And it was more DevOps focused, and now we're turning it into more software metadata T focus. So this very much aligns with what I'm doing. I'm based in near Ottawa in Canada, although right now I'm in Toronto, on the road. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Mark.
Yeah, hi. I'm a refugee from the field of chemical engineering, now in IT, working for Fujitsu as a security specialist. My history in this area goes back to about 6, 7, 8 years. Steve will be able to correct me. Working first on dependency track and then collaborating with Steve and others on SCVS, contributing little bits to CycloneDX and other projects. It's mostly, I would call it hobby, because it's only very recently that my company is actually saying, hey, hold on a second, maybe we can actually use some of this stuff properly and more widely.
Cool. And yeah, that Ole guy. I'm a consultant, have been working with open source for a very long time. And in my work as a contractor, I started realizing what was going to happen with Cyber Resilience Act. I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden, within the European Union. And I started digging and ended up within CycloneDX, and here I am. I also organized a conference in Stockholm called the Nordic Software Security Summit together with OpenSSF, Eclipse Foundation, and a few other Swedish organizations this Monday, Tuesday. So if my head isn't where it should be today, I have a good excuse. It was a really good conference, and I mentioned Koala and the TAPI so many times that people are probably just bored with it now. So let's see where we are. Do we have any new information from TC54, Steve? Okay, he ran off somewhere. For Chris, the work we do in CycloneDX is standardized within ECMA task group 54. And we have a working group for the Transparency Exchange API within that. So all the fun work, creating stuff we do in the community meetings, then we'll start very soon, now that the conference is over, with boring meetings with a few of us and a couple of members of the ECMA, because we need members of the ECMA to define ECMA standards to when we have something first to release, we will use that as input for that group. The ECMA group will not change the specification, may change some words and formats to follow everything. It has to be in the King's English language, not American English, and have a very special format that Steve almost got gray-haired working with. I heard so many war stories about that. But ECMA is a membership organization, and we're looking for more members in ECMA to actually join this particular group. We got a name from Lockheed Martin. Unfortunately, I forgot the name of that person.
Ian?
No, Ian's colleague. I don't
David?
remember.
There are quite a few actually. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll figure out.
Yeah.
But that's how the process is. In addition to the work group for the Transparency Exchange API, we also set up a work group for package URLs and the verse spec that I think have started and proceeds under Philippe Ombredam. And we're planning some other work to go that way and become ECMA official standards. But do we have any other news
Big fan of Bell.
from TC54, Steve, that want to share? Or
No,
don't think so.
we had the last meeting, was it last week? I believe it was. And the just like everything that we do, we publish those recordings up on YouTube. So if you want to catch up on what it is that we do within TC54, it's we actually have a playlist within the CycloneDX YouTube account where you can look at all of the prior TC54 meetings.
Yeah, and we have a GitHub repo where you have the notes, meeting notes as well. Okay, but it's much more formal work with the protocols and the notes and all of that. It has to be in standardization.
One question is, common lifecycle enumeration still planned to come under the umbrella of TC54?
Yes, we are starting to we are starting to solidify the scope of what it is that we want to do. We are not going to solve the world's problems with CLE. That much we know. But we do believe we have a minimal viable set of capabilities that we want the spec to initially support. And once we solidify that, then I will be bringing that forward with to TC54. I've already kind of let them know that this is coming place, in fact. So it'll be no surprise, and I think it complements a lot of the work that we're already doing.
And in almost every discussion about software transparency, it keeps coming up the lack of definition here. And as you said, we need to start somewhere. It won't be perfect, but then we can improve upon it as time goes by.
Yep.
I think the tough problem is to merge the requirements from commercial vendors that have a more strict way of looking at things and manage products, one way. The big problem there is if a company files for bankruptcy, open source projects have kind of other views depending on the project. But we'll see where we are. Okay, moving on. Other events. Dimitri isn't here, so we probably skipped the CISA sharing of SBOM work group. IETF skipped. I skipped the last meetings, but I'll try to join them again. I think we have much in common, and if we can use the transparency log services from them, I think we'll be doing ourselves a favor, not having to specify anything. But we have really good discussions. We have a planned meeting with SPDX, but our calendars was very full. So it's coming up in possibly 2 weeks. We haven't exactly set the date yet, but I'll ping Gary and Kate. But it is important that even though that we're CycloneDX, part of CycloneDX, the Transparency Exchange API doesn't prefer one format over another. We have to be transparent to both.
We had some good discussion with Gary yesterday in the reference implementation group on that, where we basically solving similar problems. I think there is a path forward. We had some good discussions about that. So I'm looking forward to what your outcome of is.
Yeah. Beautiful. We have some administrative work. I keep that in my notes just to remind myself. Then we have to look at the specs. This is the fun stuff. Oh, we did go through all the administrative work very soon. I think I skipped something here when I copied. I need to keep that. KoalaCon. Now that my own conference is over, I'll start planning for KoalaCon. So you'll see messages, and possibly I'll invite to an extra meeting where we invite SPDX, SCIT, and dependency track to see what we can do together. So that will happen fairly soon. But for you, Chris, KoalaCon is just the nickname of a way to inform all, I would say, implementers, all commercial and open source implementers of SBOM related platforms, everyone from Endo Labs and Synopsys to Dependency Track, inform them about what we're doing and enforcing that they will have to support us in a nice way before we buy heads of horses and place in their beds or something. But we have to start with the nice methods and then go over to the hard ones. But it's
like
an information meeting.
I've been keeping up to date. I've been watching all of the past meetings.
Okay, so you're up to date. Thank you. Last meeting, I presented a kind of overview over where we are. I think we have to review these, but we at least we have a first set of documentation of discovery. I think we're pretty good, and I'll show you later the object model. We have documentation use cases. We may have to go back and refine them a bit. But we do have documents on that. Pavel has provided a very early open API spec that we need to work on, and I think the sequence diagrams that I and Chris have been working on is good input for that. Security architecture we need to look at together with authentication, authorization. We have a few notes in earlier slides. And then we'll start on the publisher, and Chris produced very good input for that we can look at. But we haven't really spent much time on that. We focused on the object model and the consumer API for now. Is anything missing here or misunderstood or? I don't hear anyone screaming or yelling.
Just a point of
Okay.
clarity. I'm guessing green means that it is completed.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I need to add that. I got the same question last time. Blue means completed. Green means in work. We have some. And the purple one is we haven't started, right? So I should probably move something here to a green color, but I have to add a template. Thank you for that question.
I would be interested
Oh.
in seeing the authorization model. A link to that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, we're just going to add a username and password to the URI in clear text. Sorry.
Okay. I will help contribute something.
Okay. We have some documents I can show you later on.
Awesome. I'm sure there is a lot of experience here.
Mm-hmm. Let's look. I went through your flow spec and got inspired, and we've been asked questions about some specs. So I created something today. This is just input for discussion. Don't take it as the single point of truth. But the way I see the flow in my head is that, let's see if I can expand this a bit. The user get a TEI, an identifier, and use DNS to discover that and gets a list of API servers. Approach one of them to find all the product parts. And in our object model, we had one level where we define the various product parts, because a product you buy can be a bundle of multiple products, each with their own firmware and software versions. And then you select one and say, okay, I want to find all the versions of that part. And of course, that's a paginated list, but that's where you reach the leaf index, right? That's all the versions of something. And to find the artifacts for a specific version, you get the T collection. That's basically the list of artifacts and the various formats. A single artifact can have, I don't know how I move that. It says artifact beyond here. A single artifact can be published in multiple formats. So when you select an artifact, you can actually either say that I prefer this format or get a list, and then you download the artifact. Is this the same flow that we all see from a very, I would say, high level point of view? We're not discussing HTTP methods here, posts or gets or anything.
So I think I have like my understanding was different in the part where so my understanding was that T-leaf would be the object that includes the list or a list of product parts. But now from this diagram, you're dedicating it to T-index instead, right?
No, I think we were pretty clear on That's
So by
likely
product
a
parts.
misunderstanding on your behalf. Hang on, I'll switch my share. See if I can go here. Because the T product index, TPI, is this. And you have one or multiple leaves, right? And then you have the leaf index with all the versions. That's the model we've been working on. We have the light bulbs, we have the package starter pack, where we have multiple leaves.
Okay, that maybe okay, but then no, I'm just trying to sum up the discussions and try like make the object model. So then the leaf and collection, do they have a one-to-one relationship or no, in your opinion?
A single leaf have a single collection, yes.
So why do we need separation them if they're always one-to-one?
This is an index of all the versions. This is only a single version.
Okay, so leaf is essentially a product. So we don't have a
Yeah.
special, a separate entity for product.
We went back and forth for a long time, and we said, well,
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying
yeah,
to get
the product contains of 2 leaves, and each leaf have a version index, an index of the collections, if you want to say
so
so.
product and TPI is and product and index is the same thing, or no?
The T product index, right?
Is the same as product. There is no
Yeah.
So product index and product are interchangeable.
Now we have an index here as well. I mean, leaf index.
So I mean, can we normalize
In most
these terms?
cases, there will usually just be one leaf, but then we stumble into problems with starter packs like this, where we have multiple things in the product we buy. So the starter pack has one TI.
No, I understand, but I'm just trying to normalize like the vocabulary. So the word index, is it like semantic sugar, or is it make a difference when we say product versus product index?
That's a good discussion. Can we come back to that?
I think this is like most important because this is where most of like my troubles reading through like the APIs and everything we have, because like to me the most important thing when we're constructing APIs or documents is that we have like some sort of object diagram, like a relationship diagram in mind. And apparently, and now looking at this, I was also kind of jungling to different places. And I think this is where like a lot of confusion actually originates.
The whatever we end up calling these things, like T product index, leaf index, etc., these are the terms that will be ultimately in the ECMA standard. And when we create the Open API spec, that spec will have to mirror what the ECMA document says.
Yep. At least for the objects. Well, so this is a T leaf, but when you approach the API, you get an index of all the leaves, and that's the T index. I think we can sort this out when we look a bit further. But the important thing right now is to answer your question, say where everything is in the hierarchy, that we start with a product, then we have a leaf. That was your question that brought us here,
then,
right?
No, my second kind of issue with this from the flow perspective is let's take user experience. So the user gets this very specific box, right? And locates T like identifier on that box, right?
Mhm.
goes to the API website, resolves this identifier, and then finding
Yeah.
all product parts, which is TPI, right? So
Yep.
gets to TPI, which I'd like to
It
be on
should
this
say here.
diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
No,
it doesn't say products. That's why you see.
No. I made this in last minute. That's
Yeah,
a
I
typo.
understand. No, it's I'm not trying to. I understand that. I mean, it's always. I just found earlier today like a mistake in my Open API spec, which is sort of related. That's why.
Yeah.
It kind of in the same spot. Okay, so this is T product index essentially, right? So
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
user gets. Okay, so from there, what you're saying next, they're finding all versions. So my question is, why do they need to get to all versions where their box already has a very specific
You
version
have
of each component?
no, you have no idea on the outside of the box what's inside. With the CRA, vendors will have to change the versions all the time because we're not allowed to sell anything with known vulnerabilities. So what's inside a box with an article number, the hardware may not change, but the software will definitely change.
So there's I imagine it's an OTA, right?
Yeah.
No, but
So the TI normally doesn't give you an idea of the software version in a product.
but this is not, I mean, it may be the case, but it may not be the case as well for software. I'm just like I don't know how frequent this is frequent for me. I don't know how frequent this for you.
But that's something we added recently. Can we keep that? Because the TI can include a version, like if you buy only an app in the App Store, then you definitely know the version within the app.
Exactly.
And the TI can then include as an optional parameter a version. Absolutely. And
yes,
then
that's what
you can create a shortcut. But as a customer, I may want to look at other versions as well.
But you can, I mean, from my experience, it may be different for others. Just feel free. Usually on the software side, it's even easier than the hardware because usually on the software side, I'm looking up like specific version of something. So let's say vendor supplies.
But you could also, like Chris said, we have a ticket on in a, I don't know if it was last meeting or meeting before, but he said he wants to find out if there are newer version. He's running one version and wants to use the API to find out if there are.
Right. No, that's a great use case, but the base flow is to me is I already know the version that, and usually I mean
user knows the version, but the TI in many cases doesn't have the version.
Yeah, but why we need, like, if the user knows the version, why we make them jump, like search the list again, basically?
If they know it, they can create a TI and get to the right point. That's fine.
It could also work with hardware. A version is interchangeable with a batch, and that could be encoded into the hardware or the packaging.
Yeah. So if we go to, I believe I have something here. No, I haven't added that yet.
Part,
in the syntax of the TI, there is, in URNs, there is thought I added it. You can have a query mark and have a version spec
I remember
afterwards.
we discussed that, yeah, but it should be added. I remember the version.
Yeah,
but
I
then
just haven't done that.
But then if there is a version, so the flow is different then, right? Or are you going to try to put it
I
in
can
the same?
add that flow, definitely.
Okay, so we'll have two flows essentially on retrieval. One when the version is known, and another when the version is unknown.
Yeah. I'm
That seems
opening an
sensible.
issue to remember here. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Then it makes sense. Yeah, if you don't know the version, then you get a
The
list
version list.
of
Hi, Chris.
yeah, of
Yeah.
which
Okay,
is
great.
no, which complicates the API, but yeah, we need just to think about it.
The mental model
Okay.
I think of at least is barcode mapping, right, from a physical product good, and then discovery forward. At least that mental model works for me.
Yeah. I think I showed it last time that I added a few examples of TI types here, and we need to add more. I haven't added GSON and EIN barcodes, but I started looking into that, and I think I have some code for it, early code, in my TI test library. So we need
We're talking
to
about
continue.
we're talking about initial discovery here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Hey,
we're missing the query part of the documentation here. I just opened a ticket on that.
Here, Ole, I just realized something. If you scroll down to hashes, just take a note of this, because we'll want to change that. So instead of TEI:#, we'll probably want to say what the algorithm is.
I have the algorithm here.
Oh, hash type. Okay. Okay, so all right. Domain hash type. Okay.
Domain hash.
So those, all right, so those are the only values, no SHA-3, nothing else outside of NIST hashes.
Well, those are the three ones I came up with in my crazy
Okay.
head when I wrote it. We can surely add.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna have to go through all this in more detail and see. I think in this, I started experimenting with hashes. I haven't done. Okay, we're up to date with the code and other things.
Okay.
So in this code, the tape-parser-lib, there's a small command line client, but the really cool stuff is in the test part where we test all the Perl examples from the package URL spec, but we also test various UIDs, software IDs, and some bad stuff. And we're gonna have to work on that, but we have a hash
Okay.
here in the tests. So we're gonna just have to add stuff, but it's a starting point.
Okay.
But while doing this, I wanted to know if the URN syntax worked with the URN spec. And I also wanted to know that we could actually include package URLs like this. And we could, but it turned out that the package URL library had problems that I reported to them, and I think it's all fixed now. It was both reported as a bug in the specification and a bug in the Python library. I don't know if anyone has tested with other libraries. But that's an interesting thing when you have double colon in CPAN bundles.
Yep. Okay. Chris just published a thing for medical devices in the chat.
Oh, I haven't got the chat here.
It's called UDI. It is for the United States only. China has their own, Canada has their own, I believe the EU has their own, and of course nobody harmonized because and China in particular is like, I forget how many K of data is included in it, but it's huge. Okay, it's giant. This here, if you see the barcode on the image I sent there, has the product identifier part of it in the barcode, and that includes your GTIN for the manufacturer. So you pick up manufacturer information as well as the model of whatever it is you're
Okay.
scanning.
So
So-
let's
and this
work
is-
together and integrate this.
Mandatory on all medical equipment for the last few years. So legacy it
Yeah.
won't handle, but anything other than legacy, yes.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hook a, you know, do an experiment just to see if our sequence diagram and what we're designing just, you know, will work with this. I don't see anything that stands out as not us being able to support it, but going through the exercise at some point would be useful.
And
let-
by the way, as far as interest, I chair a working group on patching and updating medical devices in the field, along with the FDA. And I mentioned this to them the other day, the FDA, in the form of Lisa Gilbert, and she was all stoked. And I showed her T and all this, and she says, because we're called Cyber Update and Patching Cup. That's our working group. So she says, T Cup. It's meant to be, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Cool.
and so the FDA is all in favor of this as well. So
Yeah.
everybody's on board here.
Yeah. I tried, for your information, to add the presentations we've been using to the repository as well. So if you're looking for some of the slides, and if you're missing something, just tell us to update. Okay.
So, Oleg, can we try this exercise right now? So we have this product identifier. So
Which one?
again, no, what Chris just sent this image, right?
I think I want to do some other things right now. We'll
sure.
get back to that. Okay. So we do have here in the repository the T collection object that we've gone through. I got really good feedback on the JSON example from Chris that I'll start merging. We have from last time some ideas on the index object. Haven't started looking at JSON or other things here, but it's practically fairly simple. But we have to remember that in here we can point to another TI that requires resolution or leaf within the same server. So we need to figure that out. We do have an idea on the leaf object with a pointer to the T collection object as well. So I want you all to go through this lab and let's see if we can either make a combined document that we can approve or at least take as working material for continuing. But I think we have the various objects now. And that means that we can start looking a bit more on the API operations.
But no, I'm just looking at the leaf object, and here, so we just discussed. Sorry, I need this terminology because I can't get to API without it. So the leaf object you said would have a list of all the versions of the product, right?
No, not the leaf object. The leaf index contains of a list of objects.
Okay, so so one thing is leaf index, the other
Yep.
thing is leaf object.
Yep.
Okay, that's important.
Yep.
I mean
That's
that kind of makes sense, but that's okay. So we have T leaf index, that's one, and
Yep.
then we have T leaf, which is a single version, correct?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, good.
And we agreed on in an early meeting that we don't care about how the manufacturer names the version, if they use semantic versioning or anything else.
Yeah, I was
for
on
us,
that meeting.
yeah.
I mean, I
I'm
wasn't on the
repeating
meeting,
for
but
everyone.
I viewed recording. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm repeating for everyone here. So
Yeah.
to make sure we're up to date. So the version is just a text string, and that's why we need a very clear release date in order to sort and index with the latest versions, because we can't rely on the version string for sorting, right? And the only state we have on a release is whether or not it's what we call a pre-release. We may have to go back and check in the CRA, because the CRA has specific names. We can attach that to the explanation. We maybe don't have to change the name here, but just attaching to the words in CRA that we're allowed to take pre-releases to customers for a limited period of time without being CE marked, right?
Ola, just a question on that. What's the view on
single question is on your quota.
Can you promote within this? Meaning, can you patch the pre-release to a release, or would that be considered a new item?
That's interesting. So if you,
because you want to keep the UID for the same thing, right?
That's interesting. Now, do you really want the UID for the same thing?
I've never seen it done this way.
In open source, many cases we have release 15-RC2, RC1, etc., and then we promote it to release, right, and remove -RC.
No, but it usually changes.
What?
It usually changes. Like, it's not merely removing RC. There are always what I've seen, always some changes going in between RC and release.
Yeah,
So
it's a different code. Yeah.
Well, it depends on the pipeline, though.
Okay.
Because if you think in the cloud world, right, for instance, it's fairly common that you say deploy to staging. Let's just use a Docker image as example.
You promote a version.
Yes, that's how we work at Screenly, for instance.
I think to make life easier for us, we should take this back to the lifecycle enumeration project and let them sort this out and come back. Now, Victor, can you open a ticket in our issue tracker?
Yeah.
And we have to discuss in the ticket and see what we come up with, because obviously there are many different models here.
Yeah.
And we need to gather the data and see if there's some commonality, so we can make a decision whether, in which cases it's a new leaf object, in which cases it's not. Maybe pre-release doesn't work in the cloud environments.
Victor, can I ask you really quickly? Did you really like change this name? Because I have never seen anybody changing the name. I've seen them like create, but have you ever seen this in practice? Like, is it really?
Yeah, this is how we do things at Screenly, actually. Like when we deploy a version to our signage players, we test them on the candidate channel, and then if they work well in a testing environment for an extended period of time, where n hours or days, right, whatever, then we promote that exact build to stable.
Okay.
Because that way
this is common, but do you change the name? Okay, yeah, sure. We can take it offline.
Let's take it in the ticket so we capture the conversation, and let's try to resolve it next time. We only have a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to get your input as well, or at least show you what did I do with that. I showed you this already, and please get back. We already discovered that we need a secondary API flow with a version, and I'll fix that. But I wanted to take some time to look into Chris, because this is the first time I remember. I don't remember the details of your open API spec, Howell. Sorry, you may have done that, but I wasn't ready to look.
No, I
them.
haven't done the publishing. No.
No. So then it's the first time we have some ideas of a workflow for publishers, and I think this is really brilliant input. Of course, I start with a working assumption that everything is wrong, but yeah. But anyway, I think this is really moving us forward. Don't be too cocky now, Chris, but so with Chris' permission, I published this on our repository. So please go through this and try to come up with feedback, open tickets, or something. So we
The previous
remember the
comment
feedback.
the previous comment in the channel also includes a corresponding OpenAPI spec for the methods that are listed here.
When did that come? I didn't see that. Okay.
I think it's the directly one earlier in the thread.
Okay. I'll try to capture that. I've been a bit offline with all the other stuff, but I really like this
I think
work.
I've got a
and
pull
we
request
need
as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I need you all to go through this one and see if we're missing stuff or if it's something we really need to rework. But there are some good ideas here. I may have some ideas so that we have to change the order of some things or others. But maybe some parts are just implementation specific in the order you do. I would, for instance, assume that when you create a collection, you actually, or create a leaf, you create a new product version. I don't know where. But this is the product repository, so that could be the CI/CD toolchain, I guess.
There is the consideration that you might want to have your TEI and collection all set up in advance, so they can be included in the BOM and signed.
Yeah. Cool. Really good work. I appreciate it, Chris. I apologize for not answering all your messages, but I'll try to get better on it. But please, everyone, take a look because we need to start thinking about the publication part. We don't have to really lock all the specs, but I would like to be able to, based on this, at least have something for KoalaCon so we can present one view on how the consumer part works with or without version, and a second view on how a producer actually publish stuff in the API.
Speaking of, did you set a final date yet, or is that still TBD?
Sorry?
Speaking of, did you set a final date for QualCon, or is that still TBD?
Still TBD because of where we are, but I'll start looking into the calendars and synchronize with all parties, and that includes you, definitely. Most people in this meeting, I guess. There is a document I've sent out links before. It's also linked, I think, somewhere here. Otherwise, I can publish it in the chat for my Scratchpad document with all the ideas for QualaCon that I will try to pull together. Okay. Open API spec. Are we ready to start moving that into our own repository? Or do you want to take a first stab at updating that, Pavel?
I'll definitely need to update.
Okay.
I think like most things are clearer to me. So question that I asked earlier, just think about it. If leaf and collection are 1-to-1, do we really need to have them in separate objects? I would much rather unify them. I mean, I just
Okay, open an issue on that and we'll start the discussion, because I need to go back and think of why we separated them but the leaf points to maybe it's not a separate object. Yeah, you may be totally right. Let me go back and the rest of us go back.
I'm thinking in terms of API. I mean, like implementation. That's why I'm asking those questions.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it may make
absolutely.
sense, like, but yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted. Like, again, maybe not now, but if we try to work through mental exercise of where we're trying, like, so Chris gave us this medical device ID picture, right?
Yeah.
So
on screen now.
Yes. So my first naive thought is it should go into the leaf object. Is that what everybody thinks, or am I wrong?
No, it should definitely be part of the TI. You should be able to form a TI based on this.
Okay.
But if
so
there's if there's any documentation related to this attestations, that is an attestation that goes into the collection attestations.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think this is going to be a good example for us, because it's going to give us the TEI, and from that we'll be able to derive the SBOMs, which are an FDA requirement. We'll also be able to derive the CLE, so the milestone dates, which are also an FDA requirement. So it's going this is going to stress a good portion of what it is that we've developed. So this is good. And one thing we might want to do when we're going through this exercise is do it once where we have like one software stack for this device, and another instance where we actually have 2 or 3 different stacks on the same device.
Yep.
I would like to volunteer the Screenly stack for that, because I want to build this up myself, because we have EAN barcodes on our hardware player, and that is both the firmware of the device, and I want to have the firmware for the backend. So that would kind of fit that use case with the 2 mapping.
Right. Yep.
Sweet.
Okay.
Sweet.
And if we can, in some future meeting, if we could do this exercise in a way where the FDA could theoretically watch this back at their leisure, that would be really beneficial. And then, of course, if there's gaps, I would love to start inviting folks, technical folks from the FDA to come join.
Obviously, Steve, I can make all that happen. So
I kind of figured you could.
Not a problem.
Okay.
By the way, Pavel, the reason it's not in, by the way, also I'm Christopher, because we got the other Chris. So we got Chris and Christopher.
Okay.
Pavel, the reason it's not a leaf is because the UDI gives you the GTIN for the manufacturer and the model number, but not a version. It can't. Think of it as a durable label on something. It doesn't know what the version numbers are in it. So you have to go to the top level, and then you're going to give it that list and say, okay, human, tell me which version it is that we're dealing with here, because maybe the human can figure it out.
Is there, speaking of Chris or Christopher, is there a standardized approach for determining the firmware version? I mean, it's kind of like a risk in a sense for exploiting, but that process, I guess, if you have a display, sure, you can look it up, but short of that, it's hard to derive.
Or if you have Bluetooth low energy, so it's not going to be in the same band. It's going to be an out-of-band solution, whatever this is.
Yeah.
Be it a user interface, be it Bluetooth low energy, because there you have device identification, and that's a standard adopted profile under BLE, so you can pull that up. Wi-Fi, ad hoc Wi-Fi, I don't know, maybe. Steve, do you remember some of that work that was done for, I forget what it was called, it was using Wi-Fi to identify a device. Anyway, there might be a way to do that over ad hoc Wi-Fi as well too. But I think early on in the crawl portion of the crawl, walk, run model, it's going to be the user we're going to give them a list and say, here, this is what we know for this device. What are you?
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that approach. I was just curious if you have seen any standards around that, or you've seen any best practices. But yeah, I completely agree with the approach of crawl before you walk.
Yeah, the standards are BLE, and then Steve, help me with this, man. You were there.
The only thing that comes to mind, but it has nothing to do with Wi-Fi, was MUD.
MUD, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, MUD.
IETF MUD.
Right. Well, it's IP, so you can do it over Wi-Fi.
Right.
And so you could use MUD to identify it in an ad hoc sort of way. So again, because it's not a network, we're talking about a one-on-one, an Alice and Bob arrangement here. We're talking about, say a smartphone app scanning this, pulling off the G10, looking up the index, then going, oh, here's all the other things. At the same time, that app could be going out with ad hoc Wi-Fi looking for a connection, or BLE looking for a connection to pull up versioning information. And if it can get that, fantastic. But
right.
And it's and by the way, in BLE it's all SEMVer, so they don't use cities. So ServiceNow is completely off the cities.
So Christopher, I added a TI label here among all the labels. I think that's missing. Okay, friends. Did I not? No, I didn't. I think we are. Okay. What happened here? I zoomed. We're ready to update our status. Let's see if because we have started discussions on the publication interface. I say, well, we have a workflow started. I think that's really good. And I'm feeling that we have a few smaller issues, but in general, the object model sits. We have to sort out the confusion between leaf and collection. I'll take that as homework for all of us. I will reach out with an invitation to a brainstorm Koala meeting. For that. And I think we're a few minutes after the dot, but we've done good work. Anything else we need to discuss or cover that we haven't?
Yeah, if I may suggest, I'll I'm planning to update the OpenAPI spec before the next meeting. And yeah, so Chris mentioned he did some work, and I only opened it because I was on vacations until yesterday, pretty much. So I mean, we may have, so I suggest I kind of try to incorporate what we discussed today in my OpenAPI spec. It would be easier. And then Chris maybe will schedule, and Ollie, if you wish, a follow-up meeting before the next formal meeting to discuss just the API spec, where we are, so we kind of don't waste sort of everybody's time on the big one.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm very open for that. But during these meetings, we have an agenda and we need to cover a lot of things. So I'm sorry for shutting you off now then, but we do need more time to discuss that, and I'll be happy to set up extra meetings for that. But we'll synchronize on the Slack. We'll synchronize on the Slack channel for that.
Awesome.
One question. I do think that the publication API and the consumer API are so different. So in my head, I think two different open API specs. But please ponder on that and think about that and see what you think.
It can be one. They are very different, but it can still be one document. I mean, there is no problem with that. OpenAPI document is very, but essentially you're totally right, and because they are very different, but can be in one page.
But the object model would be shared though, so there might be an argument for having them in the same.
Yep.
Yeah, and it
Yep,
may be
yeah.
easier to read and all. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for sure.
Keep them together
But
because
w-
otherwise, we'll have difficulty explaining why we separated out the API spec when it's one standard.
Yeah.
That's
No,
very
And
true.
the spec
it's
allows
fine.
us to tag them, so they can be rendered separately.
Yeah, also versioning probably would be more straightforward if we have them in just one spec. Yeah, so
Yeah, so
yeah,
they fit together. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I think
absolutely.
it's fine.
All right. Recording will be published up on YouTube later today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all for a wonderful meeting. I'm really happy about the progress we're making. Please go to the repository and read all the documents that are there. I would like in a few meetings that we kind of decide that this is where we are, this is where we can start writing test code and play with. But we have some issues to sort out, as Pavel indicated. So let's fix those and then see if we can start write code. Okay, thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, nice to meet you all.